if you have any query, you can ask me the question. So we will discuss that part. So today is the day of revision.
Okay, sir.
So we have started with, we know the linear regression models where we have, let us say, beta 0 plus beta 1 x plus epsilon. Here we, in linear regression model, we assume that epsilon having the normal with mean 0 and constant variance sigma square, and they all are independent. Okay, if you say I, then I running from 1 to n, and this is the I, yi. Beta 0 is the intercept parameters, and beta 1 is a slope parameter. Y is a dependent variable, and x is a independent. Okay, so this is nothing but the concept of a simple linear regression models. If you add the more regressor, let us say beta 0 plus beta 1 x1i plus beta 2 x2i plus up to beta p xpi plus epsilon I, where yi is a dependent variable, beta 0 is intercept, beta j running from 1 to p are said to be a partial regression coefficients. X1, x2, xp are nothing but the regressors. The relation between y and x are linear in parameters, so we call them, it is a multiple linear regressor. Here again the assumption is that epsilon is the normal independent with mean 0 and sigma square. Further, we assume that the epsilon and x are orthogonal to each other. That means they are linear, they are independent of each other. Okay. So this is the concept of the multiple linear regression, and to obtain the estimate of parameters, we apply the least square estimation method. Okay. And then we perform the testing of several parameters using the f-test, testing of individual regression coefficient using the t-test. Okay, and then we finally develop the models. After development models, we have seen the goodness of fit criterion. In goodness of fit criterion, we have seen the R square. Higher the R square, better the model. Adjusted R square. Okay, higher the adjusted R square, better the models, but adjusted R square is always less than equal to R square. If you add the variables, R square is always increasing, but there is no guarantee that the adjusted R square increase. If it increases, then added variables are important. If it is decreasing, that means added variable is not important. But these two criteria can be useful when the model is a nested in nature. But suppose if the model is non-nested, then one can go for the AIC, that is archaic information criterion. And another is a BIC, that is Bayesian information criterion, or the squash information criterion. Lower the AIC, better the model. Lower the BIC, better the model. Okay, AIC is mainly used for the large sample size. And BIC is used for the small sample size. To compare both two models, we see that wherever the AIC and BIC are lower, the model is good. And the fifth we have seen, it is the Mallows CP criterion. Lower the value of CP, or especially CP equal to P, then we see that the corresponding subset of regressor is selected. So it is also known as the test of subset of regressors. Okay. So these all we talk about the model fitting, model selection criteria. Now for a diagnosis checking, of residuals, you calculate the residuals. Residuals is nothing but EI, that is the observed value minus estimated or predicted value. Second, you obtain the standardized residuals, that is the Z. It is EI upon sigma. Sigma is not known, so we substitute by the MSE. Okay. Then third is nothing but the studentized residuals, that is the TI, that is EI upon TI, sorry, it is RI. It is a 1 minus HII into MSE. Then you calculate the R student residuals, that is the TI, and it is nothing but EI upon 1 minus HII into SI square root of SI square. You can also calculate the press residuals. It is nothing but the EI, and that is nothing but EI upon 1 minus HII square root of, I think. Okay. You can also calculate the standardized press residuals. Okay. So you will make the several residuals, and after making the residuals, you see that if any one of the residuals, absolute value is any of residuals exceed 3, then we say that ith observation is outlier. Then you will draw the plots. We call them as the residual plots. That is, first you can draw the normal probability plot. Second, you can draw the residual versus predicted value plot. In normal probability plot, if all the point is covered by the line, then we say that the data is, or residuals is, normally distributed. And you try to see that is there any patterns in the data. If there is no pattern, then we say that the EI is free from yi cap. That means residuals are free from the X. It means that the constant variance assumption is true. Third, you can also take the okay. You can calculate the leverage value and make a plot of the Cook distance DI versus HII, and try to see that is there any point is outlier or not, or sorry, influential point or not. So this is for the influential points. And how to obtain the HII? HII is nothing but you have to just calculate the head matrix, and you take the diagonal value of head matrix, which is giving the leverage value, and that is nothing but x dash x inverse x dash. Okay. This is all about the regression theory when we talk about the epsilon having the normal distribution. So what happens if your response is categorical? If response is ordinal, that is categorical means nominal. And if your response is a non-normal. And if you wish to see what is the impact of X on Y, so we cannot apply the concept of a simple linear regression models. So we try to see that if suppose Y having the distribution, let us say it is a f of x, f of phi theta phi, and that is nothing but the exponential family of distribution. This is nothing but EFD, whose density is written as f of y theta phi is equal to exponent of y theta minus b of theta upon a of phi plus c of y phi. Okay, so where theta is nothing but the natural parameters and phi is nothing but it is a scale parameter. B, A and A, B, C are some function. Okay, so we are not interested in the scale parameters. We are mainly interested in the theta. So theta is also known as a canonical link because theta is nothing but it is a function of a mu, and mu is nothing but your expected response. So we call them it is the expected value of y. So if we are always interested to find out the expected value of y, so it is nothing but expected value of y is nothing with mu, mu is nothing but g inverse of theta. Okay, so it means that whatever the link function you have, it is a invertible and differentiable. Whatever link function you are obtaining, it is invertible and differentiable function. So instead of considering the individual distribution, we consider the y having a exponential family of distribution. So what are the member of exponential family of distribution? Normal distribution, members of EFD. So first is normal, second one is binomial, third one is Poisson, fourth one is gamma distribution. Okay, so we always try to also, let us say fifth, you can say that negative binomial. Okay, uh, inverse Gaussian. So these are the members of distribution. So uh, whatever the models in the second semester we have developed, linear regression models, where we assume that the epsilon having the normal distribution. But here now epsilon having normal, it means y having a normal because y is a linear function of epsilon. So here we consider that y is a member of exponential family. So in exponential family, this all distributions are covered. So instead of making the classical linear regression models, we try to generalize the linear models on the line of a classical linear model. So it is known as a generalized linear model. And this concept of generalized linear model was given by the Nelder in 1972. And then later on, Nelder and McGulla has written a research monograph of a generalized linear models. So based on this particular, when you say that generalized linear models, so if you talk about the binomial distribution, y having a binomial distribution, that means y has the two outcome. It has the binary distribution response, and if the trials are more, with the probability of the expected value of y is mu, okay, then the y follows the Bernoulli distribution, and if the trials are more than one and each trial the probability of success remain the constant, then we call them as a binomial distribution. Sum of the binomial Bernoulli is a binomial, and we compare with the binomial PMF with, so that you have considered this mu raised to y with 1 minus mu raised to n minus y. With exponential family of distribution, you will get the link function theta equal to log mu upon 1 minus mu. We call them as a logic link. And b theta, you will get some function of b theta, and phi is n. Okay, so a phi is 1 by n, something like. You have obtained this all the form. So here you can say that what is the mu? Mu is nothing but e raised to theta upon 1 plus e raised to theta. So if you have the value of the theta and b theta, what is the b theta? Anybody remember the form of b theta?
Log 1 minus mu.
Log 1 minus mu, is it?
1 minus mu.
Okay, minus of log 1 minus mu.
Sir,
Okay,
minus of
minus log.
okay. So if you know the theta and beta, you can easily find out the b dash theta, and b dash theta is nothing but expected value of y, and b double dash theta is nothing but the variance function of mu. So what is the variance of y? The variance of y is nothing but a of phi into variance function of a mu. Okay, so how you have obtained the mean and variance of a exponential family of distribution? Just write this particular density in the form of a likelihood, and then take the likelihood, then take the log likelihood. Okay, and log likelihood is nothing but y theta minus b of theta upon a of phi plus py phi. Use these two conditions, del L by del theta is equal to 0, and expected value of del square L by del theta square plus expected value of del L by del theta whole square is equal to 0. So you will get the variance of y is nothing but a of phi into b double dash theta. Okay, so you can easily obtain the mean and variance of this. So if your response is binary, then you have to have a binomial distribution, and because the link function is a logit function, so you can write the, because we know that in linear regression models, expected value of y is equal to beta 0 plus beta 1 x. In here we can call them as the eta. Eta is nothing but the linear predictors. So that is the canonical link in a, sorry, that is the identical link in a normal distribution. But suppose if you are comparing this, so here in a binomial case, the mu is nothing but it is a probability whose range is lies between 0 to 1, and this is a linear predictor whose range is lies between minus infinity to infinity. So you have to make some transformation into the probability so that that transform value is converged to the real line, so that you can compare. So we say that theta equal to ln mu upon 1 minus mu is nothing but now on a real line, so we can compare with eta, and that is nothing but our binary logistic regression model. Okay, and therefore the mu is nothing but e raised to eta upon 1 plus e raised to eta. That is the probability of interest. Given a value of x, if you know the beta 0 and beta 1, you can obtain the eta, and if you know the eta, you can obtain the estimate of a mu. That is what is the probability that the item is going to have a success. So this is known as a logit. Why logit? Because it is used. This is nothing but the CDF of the cumulative distribution function of a logistic distribution. Okay, that is how this link is known as the logit link, and mu upon 1 minus mu is known as a odds ratio, and the range of odds ratio is always lies between 0 to infinity. If you take odds ratio equal to 1, which means that probability of success and probability of failures are equal. Okay, if odds ratio is greater than 1, that means the probability of success is higher than the probability of failure. success, probability of success, and this is the probability of failure. Okay, so you can say that the odds ratio is greater than 1 compared to reference, you can have the more probability of success. That success may be anything that you have to take decision while deciding the variable. Okay. And in other way, if you find the odds ratio from the models, so you can find the adjusted odds ratio from the model as e raised to beta 1. This is said to be adjusted odds ratio. But when it is adjusted ratio, odds ratio, when other regressors are present. In simple binary logistic regression, odds ratio and adjusted odds ratio both are the same. There is no change in that. Okay. Now, suppose your y having the multinomial trials. Y takes any value from 1 to j. So that means yi j takes value 1 if ith respondents falls into jth category. 0 otherwise. So it means that yij takes the binary response. So yi1, yi2, up to all yi capital J, they are taking the binary response. This is the vector of binary response. Suppose if you are talking about the ith subject, if ith subject falls into the first category, then the vector you have a like that. Okay, because yi1 takes value 1, rest of them are 0. So what is the probability corresponding to the first response? So you said that probability of yi1, yi takes value 1. What is that probability? It is a phi 1, pi i1. Okay, so similarly, the probability corresponding to that is a pi i2 and pi ij. And we know that the sum of pi i1 plus pi i2 plus pi ij is equal to 1. So here we say that the response categories are purely nominal in nature. They are categorical in logit model. Categorical. So now if I wish to develop the models, because response are multinomial, so I may require the multinomial models. Okay. And what is the probability of yi takes value 1 up to yi takes value j is nothing but pi I j raised to yi j equal to 1 to capital J. Okay. And if you have n observation, then likelihood is nothing but I running from 1 to n, j running from 1 to capital J, yi j raised to yi j. Okay. So if I wish to develop this model when the response categories are multinomial in nature, okay, then I have to apply the multinomial logit model, or you can say that it is a baseline categorical logit model, baseline category logit model. Okay, so that is given by defined by ln pi j upon phi capital J is equal to alpha j plus beta j dash x. Okay, j running from 1 to j minus 1. So how many logit equation are there? You can have a j minus 1 logistic equation. You have to keep any one of the category is a reference category. So usually we keep the last category as a reference category. So if I'm interested to find out the pi j, so pi j is nothing but the e power alpha j beta j dash x upon 1 plus summation j equal to 1 to j minus 1 e power alpha j plus beta j dash x. Here in a multinomial logistic regression, you have a j minus 1 intercept is there, and you can have a j minus 1 regression coefficients are also different. And to find out the last probability, you can use by this formula, or you can just calculate phi j by 1 minus summation j minus 1, because you will calculate the probability for the j minus 1 category from j minus 1 logit, the sum, and subtract it from 1, it is giving the probability of the last category for the ith response. Okay. Now, if your response are ordinal, so in ordinal response, of course, the categories 1, 2, 3, J categories are there, but they have the some connection. They are ordinal in nature. That means second category depends on the first, third depends on the first and second, likewise. So when the category have the some magnitude of association property, then we cannot use the multinomial logit regression, because we have the extra information, they are ordinal in nature. So to deal with that, we will apply the, instead of the probability, we will calculate the cumulative probability. And cumulative probability is nothing but it is the probability that response yi falls into jth or less than or equal to jth category. So it is nothing but phi i1 plus phi i2 plus up to phi ij. So we, instead of the individual probability, we develop the logit model for the cumulative probability, and that is nothing but the theta j minus beta dash x. Okay, here j equal to 1 to j minus 1. Why j minus 1? क्योंकि लास्ट में क्या आ जाएगा, 1 minus capital J minus 1, that is the phi j. Okay, so theta j is nothing but intercept parameters, and beta is nothing but the slope coefficient. In cumulative logistic models, only the intercept is changing, the regression coefficient remains the same, and therefore it is also known as a parallel regression or proportional odds regression model. Okay, and what is the connection between theta 1? So theta 1, theta 2 up to theta capital J minus 1. So thetas are strictly ordering, but when this model can be applicable, when in a response are ordinal, but they are of a subjective in nature. For objective, there is a different model. So when they are subjective, it means that if we can combine two adjacent categories, okay, there should not be any change you observe into the regression coefficient. So the combination of a adjacent category has no impact on the effect of the regressor on the logit model. So if I wish to find out the cumulative probability of gamma ij, it is nothing but e raised to theta j minus beta dash x upon 1 plus e raised to theta j minus beta dash x. Okay, and if I am interested to find out the probability that ith response take the jth category or falls into the jth category, then I know this cumulative probability. I know this cumulative probability at j minus 1. Just take the difference, you will get this. And what is the likelihood you can write? Likelihood you can write it as a I equal to 1 to n, j equal to 1 to capital J. You have this probability pi ij raised to yij, but pi ij can be calculated using this. So I equal to 1 to n, j equal to 1 to capital J. What is pi ij? Pi ij is nothing but gamma ij x minus gamma ij minus 1x raised to yij. And just substitute this gamma ij by the corresponding probability, you can easily obtain. Okay, and then perform the iterative procedure and obtain the estimate of parameters. Okay, so when we talk about the binary logistic regression, we have considered this model log mu upon 1 minus mu is equal to eta. So, and eta is nothing but beta 0 plus beta 1 x. So our role is that I wish to find out the estimate of beta 0 and beta 1. Okay, but in likelihood we know that in a log likelihood you have seen that you have the only theta is a function of mu. Okay, so anyhow we have to use, because we know that theta equal to log 1 minus mu. So we have to substitute e raised to eta upon 1 plus e raised to eta into this log likelihood. And when the eta is there, of course, the eta contain beta 0 and beta 1, then just take the del L by del beta 0, calculate the del L by del beta 1. This is, we assign them as a S core function. Then we take the second derivative del L by del beta 0 square, del square by L by del beta 0, del beta 1, del square L by del beta 1, del beta 0, and del square L by del beta 1 square. We call them as a Hessian matrix. So given a value of score and Hessian, we can apply the Newton-Raphson method to estimate the parameters. And you can apply the something like the beta cap nu is equal to beta cap old plus H inverse into S, and that overall calculated beta old. Is it right or any mistake? I think we have taken minus side inside, so it is a plus. Okay, so and if the successive difference beta cap new and beta cap old, and that sum is less than epsilon, stop iteration, we get the final estimate. But to start the iteration, we require the initial estimate. So initial estimate is just obtained by regressing y on x to least square estimator. And once you get the estimate of beta, call beta 0, okay, or B0, we call them as B0. Then we can calculate the eta. Eta cap is nothing but estimate of beta 0 is beta 0, and estimate of beta 1 is a B1x. So you can calculate this eta 0. And likewise, once you get the eta 0, you can calculate the mu 0 by using this formula. Okay, likewise you can. Another way of obtaining the estimate of parameter is a iteratively reweighted least square method. IRLS. Okay, iteratively reweighted least square methods. In iteratively reweighted least square methods, we are calculating two things. One is Z. Z is nothing but adjusted dependent variable of function of y. It is a function of y. It is a d eta by d mu, eta plus y minus mu d eta by d mu, and the corresponding weight function is d eta by d mu square into v. Okay, so v or v inverse, I think it is a v. Okay, so just if you have the initial value of this mu, you can calculate the initial value of d eta by d mu. Okay, and substitute here, you will get the initial value of z, and you can get the weight. Then just regress the z on the x, you obtain the new estimate of beta, called the beta 1, obtain the corresponding eta 1, obtain corresponding mu 1, obtain corresponding d eta by d mu at 1, and then you calculate the z1 and again regress on that. Keep on obtaining. You will get the second estimate, see the successive difference between beta I plus 1 estimate of ith iteration is less than epsilon, stop the iteration, the ith estimate obtained at the iteration is the final estimate. So once we have the estimate, we are interested to find out the variance of B, and variance of B is nothing but sigma square x dash W x inverse. Okay. So if we know the, and if, because we are considering the likelihood approach, the sigma square is 1, so variance of B is nothing but x dash W x inverse. So we have obtained this, all the things. Now we are going for the testing of parameters. So to perform the testing of parameters, what we do, we, or you can say that before going over the testing of parameters, whether the model is good or not, so we calculate the deviance. And what is the deviance? Deviance is nothing but the twice of LS minus LM. LS means likelihood under saturated models. LM means likelihood under the model consideration. And if the value of the deviance, okay, it has the chi-square distribution with degree of freedom, that is the number of observation minus number of parameters. So if I have the two models, I will calculate the deviance of the first model and deviance of the second models. It is the for the model 1, for the model 2, and both the models are nested in nature. Let us say the model is beta 0 plus the linear predictor is beta 0 plus beta 1 x1 here, and here it is a beta 0 plus beta 1 x1 plus x2. So that means first model is a submodel of the second model. So of course the deviance of first model is always larger than the deviance of the second model. So therefore we will see the successive difference of this and compare with the twice of P minus Q. P is nothing but number of parameters in the second models, and Q is the number of parameters in the first model. So if the hypothesis is rejected, it means that added variable has significant contribution in model development. Okay. So we can also use the deviance as subset of test of regressors. Let us say that my linear predictors has this form x beta. Now I am dividing this particular into the two part x1 beta 1 and x2 beta 2. It has the, let us say, n minus r regressors, and it has the r regressors. Of course there are r parameters. So if I am interested to test beta 2 equal to 0, that means there is no impact of the last r regressions. So I will calculate the deviance of x, and I will calculate the deviance of beta 2, beta 1, because under h naught beta 2 equal to 0, so we'll calculate deviance. So of course it has the less parameter, so deviance is higher than the all models. So we will calculate the deviance of beta 2 given beta 1 is equal to deviance of beta 1 minus deviance of beta 2. And it has the chi-square with r degree of freedom. So we'll compare this deviance. If it exceeds the chi-square r with alpha level of significance, then reject at naught. Reject at naught means beta 2 is significantly different from 0. Okay, beta 2 is significantly different from 0. So it means that added variable has the important. same subset of regressors you can compare in obtain that way. Suppose your eta is something like that, beta 0 plus beta 1 x1 plus beta 2 x2. Now I will divide into the two parts. This is the one part and this is the another part. And if I wish to perform beta 2 equal to 0, individual testing of parameters can be also assessed based on the deviance of the regression. So you can uh, calculate d beta given beta 1 as a d of beta 1 minus d of this entire beta, which contain beta 0 and beta 1 2. And this compare if this exceeds chi-square with 1, because how many parameters? 1 parameters. So it is a chi-square with 1 alpha, then we say that the null hypothesis is rejected. That means added variable is important. So individual testing can be also performed using the subset of regression. Sometimes people apply the Wald statistics for individual testing of regression coefficient. Okay, so we know that these all are having a normal distribution because MLEs are asymptotically normal with mean beta and variance. What is the variance? So you have already x dash w x inverse. Okay, so of course individual they have the asymptotically normal, so beta j cap divided by the standard error of beta j cap has the normal 0 1 and therefore z square has the chi-square 1, and this is nothing but the Wald statistics. And then you compare with the chi-square 1. If hypothesis rejected, beta j is a significantly different from the 0. So null hypothesis here, beta j equal to 0. And now what is the standard error of beta j? So variance of beta j cap is nothing but it is a diagonal value, jth value is nothing but the variance, and then you take the square root, it is giving the standard error of the beta. And if I know the standard errors and beta j, I can obtain the confidence interval, that is beta j cap plus or minus z alpha by 2 standard error of beta j cap. If I am interested to find out the odds ratio, because I know the odds ratio is nothing but odds ratio for the jth regression coefficient e raised to beta j. So if the confidence interval for odds ratio of j is nothing but e raised to beta j minus z alpha by 2 standard error of beta j cap, that is the goal giving the lower bound. And what is the upper bound? It is a e raised to beta j cap plus z alpha by 2 standard error of beta j cap. It is the upper bound. You can suppose given a value of x 0, you wish to predict the confidence interval for the eta 0. So what is the eta 0 cap? Eta 0 cap is nothing but x0 dash into beta cap. So variance of eta 0 cap is nothing but x0 dash variance of beta cap into x0. So that is x0 dash variance of beta is x dash w x inverse x0. Okay, so to obtain the confidence interval is nothing but mu plus or minus, again it is a z alpha by 2 square root of x0 dash x dash w x inverse x0. Okay, so if I'm saying that this minus at the lower bound of eta 0 cap and upper bound of eta 0 cap is nothing but eta 0 cap plus z alpha by 2 divided by square root of x0 transpose x dash w x inverse x0. Then if I'm interested to find out the confidence interval of y or the mu 0, so mu 0 cap is nothing but e raised to eta 0 cap plus 1 plus e raised to eta 0 cap. What is the confidence interval? So just you have this lower limit of mu 0 cap is nothing but e raised to. So you have a, instead of eta 0, you have to write the lower bound of eta 0 cap divided by 1 plus lower bound of eta 0 cap. And upper bound of eta 0 cap is nothing but e raised to upper bound of eta 0 cap divided by 1 plus e raised to upper bound of eta 0 cap. So that is giving the, sorry, it is a upper limit of probability. So this is all we obtain. But again, the thing is, we wish to see that diagnosis checking of residuals. So in generalized linear models, we usually use the three types of residuals. One is a deviance residuals. Sorry, let us start with the Pearson residual. So Pearson residual is nothing but yi minus n into mu I cap upon ni or n into mu I cap into 1 minus mu I cap. Second is a deviance residual. What is the deviance residual? Deviance residual is denoted by the di. Di is nothing but the sine function of yi minus mu I divided by square root of di. Sorry, square root of, sorry, it is not the di, it is a r of di is this. And what is the di? Di is nothing but it is a contribution of ith respondent in deviance. Okay, so we know that the d is nothing but the summation di square r running from 1 to, let us say there are n observations. So that relation we know. Okay, so if the y is greater than mu, RDI takes positive value, y less than mu, it is taking the negative value. And the third one is a Anscombe residual. What was the problem with the Pearson residuals? Pearson residuals, for a skewed distribution, it is giving the skewed. It does not stabilize the variance, and that is how we look for the variance. We look for the residuals, which has the basic property of a normal residuals, like a normal distribution and the stabilized variant. So, which Anscombe has given the transformation. You can use this transformation and obtain the form of the Anscombe, and then you obtain the residuals of Anscombe, that is nothing but a of y minus a of mu divided by square root of variance of a of y. And variance of a of y is nothing but, what is that? It is a double dash, a dash square, na? A dash mu square into variance of y, something like that. So this residuals has the constant variance or stabilized variance and the property of this. So you can obtain the form of the Anscombe residual for various distributions. Similarly, you can obtain the form of the deviance residuals for various distribution. Why? Because you know the various form of the deviance for various distribution that we have already derived. And then you can make the normal probability plot for di, sorry, RDI, and if all the point is covered by the line, then we say that the residuals is normal. Make the plot of RDI versus yi cap and see is there any patterns in there. If there is no pattern, then we say that the variance, residuals has the stabilized variance. to decide the point is an influential point or not, or you can say that to identify the outliers. Of course, you can see that the residual, any of the deviance, any of the residuals is less than equal, exceed the 3, then we say that the ith point is outlier. But to decide the influential point, one can calculate the difference is deviance, difference in betas, and difference in chi-square. And if any one of them is exceed the 4, either this, or either this, then we say that the ith point is a influential point. And variance of chi-square is nothing but the square of the standardized Pearson residuals. Okay. So these are the way you can take the decision. तो आई थिंक जितना भी हमने डिस्कस किया था उसमें से मैंने मैक्सिमम पोर्शन कवर कर लिया है. वन थिंग आई मिस्ड, दैट इज प्रोस्पेक्टिव स्टडी एंड रिट्रोस्पेक्टिव स्टडी. Prospective study is also known as a follow-up study, cohort study. Retrospective study is known as a backward study, case control trial study. Prospective is forward study. Okay, in a prospective study you give the exposure and then try to obtain the incidence of disease. So it is a follow-up study. In retrospective study, you have the disease group people and non-disease group people, both are that. You retrospectively take a sample from that and try to study what is the impact of exposure. Okay. So logistic regression giving the same estimate of the regression coefficient for a prospective as well as the retrospective study, except the intercept parameters. And therefore, we always use the logistic regression. Prospective study required a larger sample size. It required the large time to follow up. Lots of the cost is associated with that. Our retrospective study already you have the one group of the people who have the disease. So that data is already available, and from the case history, you try to identify what kind of exposure the individual got, so that there was happen of a disease. So retrospective study is sometimes more easier compared to the follow-up study or the prospective study. Any questions to anyone?
सर
No, sir.
एक क्वेश्चन था. हम लोग ने जो प्रैक्टिकल 4 किया, लास्ट प्रैक्टिकल किया था ना. हेलो.
बोलो बोलो.
हाँ सर, मैंने कल वो किया तो मेरे को एरर आ रहा है और मेरे को ट्राई सॉल्व करने का मैंने बहुत ट्राई किया, बट मेरे से वो हुआ नहीं.
तो उसको क्वेश्चन थोड़ी बोलते हैं.
डाउट है, क्वेश्चन नहीं है, डाउट है. सॉरी.
डाउट है तो सॉल्व किया आपने, कहाँ गड़बड़ है वो पूछना है. पहले आप बताइए, इसमें कोई क्वेरी जो थियोरेटिकल डिस्कशन हुआ उसमें?
थियरी में नहीं है सर.
एनीवन?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No,
No, sir.